Perfect. That's the recording started. So if you want to crack on. Okay.
Thank you, convener. And for those online that maybe missed my start, I obviously just started off with some introductions with Chief Inspector McDougall to my right and DCI Karen Main to my left. And I initially provided an update around about naloxone distribution within the North East, and our staff now carrying these naloxone kits. And also I then provided an update around about a drugs education programme that the North East Division are supporting across all 3 local authority areas with the Daniel Spargo MABS Foundation to enhance drug education within our schools. And then that's just a pilot to start with. And if anybody wants any further information around about that, I'm more than happy to talk that through. So just continuing with my update, I was away to talk about North East Divisions and Police Scotland leading on a multi-agency subgroup of the Public Protection Chief Officers Group in developing a multi-agency protocol to assist agencies responding to caring for and repatriating children and young people under 18 who are at risk of county lines exploitation by serious and organised crime groups. I think that's a terminology that unfortunately we're probably all becoming too familiar with now in terms of that county lines. This operating protocol specifically addresses the multi-agency response to children and young people who are suspected to be involved in serious and organised crime activity from various local authority areas. These victims may be from the same local authority as located, perhaps from neighbouring local authorities, or indeed UK-wide, and we're seeing that within North East Division. The National Guidance for Child Protection in Scotland states that trafficking can occur when children and young people are recruited, transported or exchanged in order to be exploited. And it's important that we as a public protection group look at ways to work together to address this, and some operating models in particular are where we identify children exploited through county lines, that they are cared for by social work rather than being taken into police buildings. And this is a real step forward, and the fact that the conversations are happening and we're looking at ways to support these young people being exploited and being treated as victims rather than necessarily as people as being criminals is a really important step to support our young people. Moving on to just some operational updates that I want to kind of cover. And although there's been some well-publicised incidents of antisocial behaviour in the city centre of Aberdeen, current indicative figures indicate that vandalism offences across the entire city have actually reduced by 9.3%, which is about 263 less offences from last year. And as per one of our primary purposes, which is to prevent and detect crime, all incidents of vandalism will be investigated according to the individual circumstances, and where sufficient evidence is gathered, perpetrators will be charged. I just want to provide an example about the strong partnership working that goes within Aberdeen City in policing and working with our partners across local authority and beyond in terms of how we address antisocial behaviour. So as an example, during 2019-2020, issues of antisocial behaviour involving young persons were identified beside the Tesco's in Woodend, where approximately 600 reports were made to the police about this behaviour, and this was estimated to be costing the public purse about £150,000. Youth workers engaged with the young people and asked why they were there, and that information was then used to understand how to solve the problem. And working in partnership with Tesco, Aberdeen City Council, Street Sport and the Community Council, we worked together and successfully applied for funding via the Fairer Aberdeen Fund and Cashback for Communities, which accumulated over £15,000 that was used to provide free Wi-Fi for 5 years, a seating area and a mural painted on the fence for young people. And the additional money was used for diversionary activities. And looking back now, in the first year of the operation, reported crimes fell to 11, which is a significant drop. And the reason I highlight that is that this is the sort of collaborative thinking we need to ensure we apply to all these wicked problems like this, and as a model which policing in the North East is well versed in, and seldom are antisocial behaviour issues a matter for a single agency and must be collaboratively addressed and considered from all perspectives, in particular on this occasion from the young people. We can never police our way out of antisocial behaviour involving young people. It does need to be involved in that kind of strong partnership working. And as you know, Aberdeen continues to be a purple flag city, and we should never rest on our laurels or take that for granted. And we need to look how we continue to enhance safety and security in our city centre. But but we must do so in a collaborative way, which I know is a vision shared by all of our partners in the city centre, particularly as we approach re-accreditation for the Purple Flag. And some of the key drivers for obtaining the Purple Flag is having a strong partnership working, which I think is well versed in Aberdeen city centre. And we also need to be looking at ways to lower crime and antisocial behaviour. And one of the key things for myself is often there's not an awful lot of good news in the story in the world just now, but we need to be enhancing a positive perception of our city centre, and that everybody, police included, takes responsibility for that, promoting the benefits of our city centre and ensuring that we can have a diverse city centre that attracts everybody, including our youths, and there's something there for them to do. Moving on to some organisational matters, the Chief Constable of Police Scotland has made it clear through the Your Safety Matters Assault Pledge that being assaulted at work is simply not part of the job. North East Division is fully committed to all aspects of the Your Safety Matters agenda, and we've dedicated a supervisory resource in the form of a You Matter coordinator to promote its importance to internal and external audiences. And in November last year, Police Scotland launched the National Partnership Pledge with multi-agency representation, including NHS Scotland, Scottish Prison Service, Scottish Ambulance and Fire and Rescue Service, amongst several others. The group will share best practice, develop preventative approaches and use consistent messaging to encourage staff in their organisations to report incidents. Work is ongoing with Community Planning Aberdeen to launch a local partnership pledge to align to the campaign and reduce the number of assaults on emergency and frontline workers. Police Scotland have developed a shared communications toolkit with a presentation on the proposal and the next steps to take the project forward, and this is scheduled to be delivered to CPA in February. In addition, Police Scotland are continuing the rollout of the National Taser programme, and locally we will shortly have 100 trained officers in the North East, matching the national ambition. Taser provides a further tactical option in the de-escalation of violent episodes and has already proved its worth at instance locally and the safety of our staff. And I hope all these updates I've provided are helpful to everybody, but I'm sure there may well be some questions which I'm happy to take.
Perfect, thank you. Are there any questions? I've got Councillor Graham and then Councillor Thompson.
Thanks. Listening to your report, and it was interesting, you detailed this aspects of anti-social behaviour in the city centre, and there was also things in Tesco's up in Marsick. I'm a board member up here at Aberdeen, so I know everything that happened up at Tesco's. But is there anything being undertaken to try and prevent antisocial behaviour in the city centre, similar to what we've learnt from what happened at Tesco's?
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, absolutely. And as I mentioned in my update, we're currently, as a city, a way to embark upon the re-accreditation of the Purple Flag, and we should never just be putting things in place just to get a Purple Flag. This should just be day business for us. And one aspect that certainly as my time previously in the division as the Chief Inspector for the City Centre of Aberdeen in particular, I was really proud of that partnership work and recognising that the problems that our city centre faced in terms of any crime, whether that was retail crime or whether it was antisocial behaviour, we could never do that alone. We could never just be the police and police our way out of it. We really enjoy some really strong partnership working here. And if I look at the incidents that have been reported around about antisocial behaviour, you know, from my perspective as a city, we need to be proud of what we've got as a city centre. Union Terrace Gardens opening in a really vibrant, well-lit, inviting area, which, you know, we know will invite young people to come in. But I think as a city, we shouldn't have an ambition of wanting to police our way out of that in terms of to stop, you know, antisocial behaviour. We want to have police constantly. Clearly, the police have a role and a responsibility in amongst this, but it needs to be addressed from a multi-agency perspective, understanding why youths, because predominantly the antisocial behaviour we've seen in the city centre is from youths. There are other aspects of antisocial behaviour in the city centre, but what seems to be of prevalence just now is some antisocial behaviour involved in youths. So, you know, we need to work with Aberdeen City Council, youth workers, community wardens, and look at diversionary activities, because, you know, we want a city centre to attract everybody, including young people, into it. So it's an issue that we're aware of. I think the recent media reporting is a snapshot in time, and I don't actually think is representative of what's happening in the city centre, because there's a lot of good things. It is an inviting city centre. You know, we want to welcome our young people into our city centre. We, as a city, you know, need to ensure that we provide something for our young people as well. And I know come the fullness of time, and I know as we move out of the COVID pandemic and how difficult it is for businesses, that we all need to work together to try and improve it and provide something for everybody, not just young people, but for everybody. But I go back to my earlier comment about that perception. You know, we need to be telling the fuller story about Aberdeen City Centre, and not just trying to focus on what's bad and still referring to the pandemic and whatnot. We know how difficult that is, but we need to instill some pride in our city centre, and that kind of manifests right across the piece. And ultimately as well, parents need to take responsibility for their children, and understanding what they're doing, and also try and feed into trying how we can look at diversion activities for our young people. Well, that's quite a long-winded way, but hopefully it addresses your question.
So Graham, yeah. Can you use your microphone, please? Thank you.
I'm sorry. Do you also think it's just perception when kids are kids? And when you go in amongst, you see a group of kids there, yeah, people just get a concern when they see the kids, but they're maybe just being boisterous, or maybe just misbehaving, but they're just being kids, basically. And do you think that's one of the things? One of the things also got to me, probably hard to put this across. So it's probably hard to put this across. I remember walking up beside St Nicholas Churchyard, and within the churchyard was a group of, no, it wasn't the kids, it was older folk, just sitting there drinking and having an absolute great time, in their opinion. But I think it distracted people from going into the church and things like that. Is there anything being done? I mean, I think they need help, to be quite honest. My first impressions was, I didn't like these people then. I thought, well, but they need help. Why are they there? Is there anything being done about that?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so again, you know, all points are valid, from the point of, yes, you know, what do we expect when a group of 15-year-olds, I say 15-year-olds, I don't know the age of people that are coming in there, but that kind of demographic are coming together. But you know, we need to have some sort of expectation of what young people do. We were all young once, and I think it's incumbent upon ourselves in positions of authority to be able to provide something for them, not just simply, you know, young people being faced with police who are trying to address a problem that impacts society in terms of they're there for a reason. Like I say, the city centre is an exciting place to come when you're a young person. You've got a free bus pass to come into the city centre, which I think is fantastic because they're using it. But nonetheless, they need to be able to do so responsibly. There needs to be something there for them. In terms of your other point around about adults and drinking, obviously there's the bylaw about not drinking in the city centre, which is absolutely a policing matter. But what sits behind that in terms of people, in terms of their position of whether it's substance abuse problems, again, is something that we need to be working in partnership with other people as well to try and break the cycle. And unfortunately, this isn't a new issue. This isn't just something that's emerged just in the last year or two. I recall these are all very similar issues that we looked at when I was the local area commander in the city centre. So we do have a well-versed partnership approach to deal with it, and we just need to try and focus upon the priorities. And as I say, you know, the reaccreditation of the purple flag should, you know, if we don't see issues in the press, as a timely reminder, the actual reaccreditation of the purple flag is another timely reminder of, you know, the need for that partnership approach to all our problems in terms of city centre type issues.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, convener, and thank you for the update. You've mentioned a couple of times now that the purple flag reaccreditation is coming up. I mean, do you feel that the current situation with antisocial behaviour could potentially jeopardise that? And just as a follow-up to that, you've also mentioned the partnership working approach. Is there anything in your opinion that could be done to strengthen that, to ensure that we have a successful reaccreditation? Thank you.
So in terms of the first point about, do I think the current issues of antisocial behaviour are going to have an impact upon the reaccreditation? Answer to that is it could do. because quite clearly, in terms of a city centre, antisocial behaviour is one of the things that, in terms of to get a purple flag, you need to have measures in place to ensure it's an inviting city centre to come into. But what I would say, I don't think the antisocial behaviour, I think it's in some ways is the reporting of it is disproportionate of what's actually happening on the ground. We have a city centre that's different to what it was once in terms of a massive footfall pre-pandemic, and at that point, some of these minor antisocial behaviour issues involving youths might have gone unnoticed because of the amount of people in the city centre. Now we have less footfall, and we need to start encouraging people to come in to increase the vibrancy of it. But it's a kind of vicious cycle, isn't it? In terms of, we need to be proud of our city centre. We need to ensure that people can feel safe when they're coming in. So that perception, I think, is hugely important. But I'm reassured that the problem is not one in terms of the volume of antisocial as such that it will impact our purple flag. I don't think the antisocial behaviour in the city centre is the problem. It's our approach to it needs to be collegiate. It needs to be brought together, and that's where the accreditation of the purple flag comes from. Recognising you've got a problem or an issue that needs to be addressed, and it's not addressed in a single agency approach. That to myself is the benefit of the purple flag in terms of showcasing how you do it, because no city centre in the UK is going to be immune from antisocial behaviour. It's how they approach it, and it's not just simply we're going to police our way out of this. Kids that are coming into the city centre are just going to be policed out of it. That's not the way to embrace our young people. Listening to our young people, understanding what the issues are, and looking at a multi-agency approach is the way out of it. That's how you get your purple flag. And I am proud of that partnership working in the city centre. We do need to re-energise it because we've come out of the pandemic, and there's been a refocus of some things. But we're very much out of that pandemic now. We've got a city centre that's up and running. People are using it. So, and I'm reassured speaking to my local area commander, Dave Patterson, for the city centre and Aberdeen Inspired, that partnership is actually standing up again and has been for some months. And I suspect, you'll see more visibility on that in the future.
Just to say thank you for that, and it's reassuring to hear that often it's the fear of the crime or the antisocial behaviour rather than the behaviour or crime itself that seems to be the issue, and it's about perception. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Just on partnership working, I think Mr. McDonald wants to add. Thank you.
Thank you, convener. I think it's really important to help committee understand the contribution from Aberdeen City Council as well with the partnership working. There's been a couple of questions about Union Street specifically, some of the issues that we've been facing, and perception is definitely the word that I go with. If we look at antisocial behaviour from the information that we're getting, it's actually reducing, which is a positive. And the Old Kirk, there's been action plans in place, again, working with police partners as well. And as we mentioned, we've got our community wardens, but one specific team within ACC, which is multi-agency, is the Community Safety Hub. And that's really crucial for us as we go forward. So to give some reassurance to committee that collaboration and that ongoing working to address any of these issues, that the perception is that they've escalated, but they're actually reducing, which is positive, that will continue.
Thank you, Ms. McDonald. Councillor McClellan.
Thank you, convener, and thank you to the Chief Superintendent for his introduction. I want to touch upon similar issues to Councillor Graham around antisocial behaviour in the city centre, and it was welcome to hear that statistically the numbers are dropping, but equally it was only Monday when someone was phoning me about the issues in the city centre, or how they perceive the issues. So I just wanted to, we recently saw reports in the press around apparent fighting in Union Terrace Gardens, and obviously it's a place we want people to go and visit. We want the gardens to be a success for our city. We also have heard around youths gathering on Union Street, generally getting up to no good, apparently. I guess how you mentioned in your narrative around the interventions in Wood End and how successful they've been. I guess it's how, and I completely take on board what Mr. McDonald said. It is partnership work, and it's about how the council and police and other partners get together and find a creative solution, and what that creative solution could be to keep young people occupied and interested in something different than what they're currently perhaps getting up to. So I guess what do you feel could that be? What works in Wood End might not work in the city centre. There's obviously limited space in the city centre in terms of what we can do. And the second part of my question was going to be what should sort of concerned citizens do, if they're, you know, if they're in the city centre and they are concerned about what's going on, the general antisocial behaviour. And I completely appreciate generally gathering in a large group might not be, you know, a crime, but what should people do if they feel that what's going on in with youths in the city centre is making it a place they don't want to visit? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. So, you know, bringing the point about Aberdeen City Council in terms of community safety hub, again, that's a crucial, you know, driver for change, and again, something that we as a local authority police partnership, you know, be hugely proud of, and understand that, you know, that me sitting here, I don't have all the ideas, but we've got a good creative team that are diverse in thinking, not just from a policing perspective, but from a community safety hub in terms of looking at it from a youth perspective as well as an adult perspective, etc. And also the benefits of the Purple Flag is that you can access lots of information about how other cities approach similar wicked issues. So I think we need to have confidence in the teams that we have in place to address this through Community Safety Hub, through Aberdeen Inspired, through Police Scotland, and the various other partners that work with us that will come up with creative solutions to addressing the matter in the city centre. And we may well try things that might not work, but I think one of the key things that I think we do need to really understand is from the youth perspective, because we do not want to implement something that suggests that the city centre is not an area for our young people, because it absolutely needs to be. But we need to have something on offer for them, and that needs to be beyond pubs and nightclubs for young people. We've got a beautiful Union Terrace Gardens just now, you know, and you know we need to expect that young people are going to use it. So we just need to understand what can we provide for them there. So again, I think you know, it's obviously not long opened. We've seen and again, this perception, it's a snapshot. It's emblazoned upon the papers, and I don't actually think that the problem is as big as it's been suggested in the papers, but nonetheless it's there and we can see it, and there's an issue, so we'll address it, and we'll address it in the way we always do in Aberdeen City, and that's in a partnership approach.
Just on a second question around if there is a member of the public that is feeling concerned, what can they do to get in touch with yourselves?
So specifically about a city centre, obviously you know, there's the CCTV network that we've got. So one would hope that, you know, these types of things are kind of picked up initially through the CCTV. But again, back to the point of encouraging people to contact the police should these issues of antisocial behaviour you know, be there in front of them. I would encourage people to contact the police so we can respond to it.
Convener?
Thank you for that response. I'm just wondering off the back of that as well, in terms of the public getting in contact, but if people were to make representations to the councillors, I wonder if there could be like a circulation around all local members of their direct contacts, their local teams out in the communities, as well as the hierarchy coming through the system of who to raise specific points to.
Yes, absolutely. So in terms of, we can share that post the meeting, but by way of an update to that, I've got my Martin McDougall to my right here, who's the local area commander for the north of the city, and I mentioned for the south of the city, which brings in the city centre, as Chief Inspector David Patterson, and they're supported by a number of local policing inspectors. So, you know, like any big organisation, there is change of personnel and people. So I think a timely reminder, but particularly with myself just coming in as well, just to refresh the contact list for all members here, so that if they have any queries. Obviously, I am in charge of policing for all of North East, and I'm supported very ably so by my local area commanders, and they are, in my view, the first point of contact for all members in terms of their area. Martin being the north of the city and David being the south of the city, but equally I'm more than happy to hear from members on any significant issues, but absolutely we can share contact list, that up-to-date one.
That would be perfect. Thank you so much. I've got Councillor Copeland, Councillor Bonsall, and Councillor Brooks.
Thank you, Convener. Can I first say, Mr. Mackey, congratulations on your appointment. I look forward to working with you going forward. At the risk of sounding like a broken record, everybody has said say about perception and what people think. And the thing that concerns me is a few weeks ago we had a meeting at the council where we discussed the city centre master plan. And we had a number of young people come in and address the committee, address the council. And one of the things that some of the young people raised was they didn't come into the city centre because they didn't feel safe. Now, it's all about perception. Mr. MacDonald has pointed out what's happening with the council and the fact that antisocial behaviour is actually going down. But some people's perception is that there's no police about, and a police presence makes a huge difference if somebody can see a policeman. Now, I know you've got huge demands on your time and stuff, and it's a problem and all the rest of it. Is there anything we can do working together that would enable Police Scotland to actually have a physical presence, a visible physical presence during the busy times in the city centre? I mean, I'm thinking like a Saturday afternoon and things like that, when young people are in the town, so that those that currently don't come in will see the differences. They do see the thing, and they do see that city centre is, by and large, a very safe place to be. I mean, is there anything you think that we should be doing it, I'm not doing, or is there anything we can do to enhance that feeling of well-being and safety for the youngsters?
No, thank you, and it's a really good and valid question. So, in terms of busy periods in the city centre, what we do in the city centre policing in terms of we apply a methodology of how busy a weekend we perceive it's going to be, so we can understand how we're going to deploy it. So we make sure that our policing isn't just solely policing the city centre of Aberdeen, because Aberdeen's a big city and with lots of issues throughout it that requires policing. So we, almost similar to a football match, we will grade, in terms of how busy it is. Halloween weekend, for example, extremely busy weekend historically, and we'll make sure that the appropriate policing is in place. And I would contend that just now we do have a good police presence in the city centre of Aberdeen, but like crime, statistics say one picture, but actually if the feeling of that is that the reverse, there could be other issues in terms of people don't feel confident reporting about the crime or haven't reported it, or there's just a feeling that's there. And that's the difference between statistics and the sense of it. And the same with seeing police. If there is a feeling that there isn't police there, I would contend that there absolutely is. And perhaps we all take a responsibility ensuring that message is put out there, police as well, in terms of our comms, in terms of how we ensure the public feel reassured and safe about our police presence. And perhaps members here also play a part in that. And what I would say, when I was a local area commander, it's something that happened, and I would extend the invite now, is if any member wanted to come out with a police patrol to see what we have in place, so that you can be reassured yourselves in terms of how we approach it, be more than happy to facilitate that, because I think that's an important part as well, so that we can come from it from a partnership approach in terms of reassuring that what's the policing approach to the city centre of a given day, even and weekend, is something that's properly considered. And again, if that would assist in allowing any members to come out and see the briefings that we put in place for our staff, and also what it looks and feels like on the ground, I'd be more than happy to facilitate that in the future, if that would be something that would be helpful to address the perception.
Thanks for that. I mean, I am aware that you're doing lots and lots of stuff, and there is actually a presence, but it's that, as you said yourself, it's that perception. And I find it worrying that young people maybe don't feel safe, so they don't come into the city centre. And it's a difficult one. I fully agree with that. We see the figures, antisocial behaviour is actually going down, but good news stories don't sell newspapers. as we all know. And again, I'll just say it's perception. That's what it's all about. So thanks for your answer.
Thank you, Councillor Copeland. Councillor Bunsell.
Thank you, convener. I was just wondering what city centre businesses have been saying about the issues of antisocial behaviour. Would it be possible for us to hear about that?
So fortuitous that I've got a meeting with Aberdeen Inspired on Friday coming. I haven't had the opportunity to catch up with them yet, but I will reassure yourself that we are very much linked into Aberdeen Inspired as the voice of businesses in the city centre. David Patterson, my Chief Inspector, met with them last week. In fact, he can't be here today actually because he's meeting with the Aberdeen Inspired round about the reaccreditation of the purple flag. But in terms of the voice of the businesses, unfortunately I can't tell you that just now until I've excuse me, I'm still getting up to speed with my post, and it's been on the agenda, and I've got to meet the Chief Executive of Aberdeen Inspired on Friday, who I'm certain will kind of bring me up to speed on that comment.
I'll maybe catch up on that next time. Councillor Brooks.
Thank you, convener. Really, perception's been mentioned an awful lot in this chamber today, and I think there is a perceived lack of police in the city centre and in Union Terrace Gardens, and it is perceived, and I think there's a misunderstanding of what proactive policing or proactive presence is in the city centre and what reactive presence appears in the city centre. And I just wonder, because we have the press present with us, and we were talking about some of the coverage being disproportionate to the levels of policing, I just wonder if city centre policing could be given a distinct 6-monthly update as part of this meeting, just to alleviate the poor perception that possibly exists.
I absolutely have no issue with that whatsoever, and specifically updating the city centre policing, and I'm more than happy to also bring Chief Inspector David Patterson along, who will have the kind of full nuts and bolts in terms of what our approach to that is. But I'll probably reiterate my earlier point as well. You know, the policing of Aberdeen City Centre isn't just about Police Scotland. You've got a big part in this, clearly, but it needs to be done in a partnership approach. We've got the Pride of the Community Safety Hub who work with us to address these problems, and community wardens, youth workers. So there's a number of multifaceted approaches to this, not just simply by policing, but quite clearly the community want and rightly expect to see a police presence in that. And whilst it's easy for me to say, I believe we have a good, appropriate police presence in there, that needs to come from our communities as well. What I would say as well, and I would encourage members to promote the ongoing police survey in their communities and to access that online to give feedback on policing in our communities. I think it's a really important, particularly with myself as new divisional commander coming in, to get a good understanding of what our communities feel of their policing and what improvements they would like to see. Just now, the best way of doing that is hearing from our people. So, as I say, while I sit here now and say that I'm confident we've got a good police presence in the city centre, if there's a feeling that that's not the case, then I'm more than happy to hear more about it. And again, I go back to my earlier point about extending that invite to any members that want to see the policing in operation, because I think it's an important part to be able to sell the message, not just coming from me, the police commander saying policing's great. I think it's important as well that you can reassure yourself. So again, I do make that as a welcome to any member that would benefit from that, to reassure your communities.
Thank you. Councillor Brooks, in order to sort of satisfy your desire for a report, would you be content with sort of a joint police community safety report, maybe coming back every 6-ish months as committee cycle goes? I think it's a good idea, just to sort of get an understanding of the partnership working that's going on as well.
Yes, convener, I think that's an appropriate action. I think the partnerships that are going on, I'm very aware that on a Saturday night and some Friday nights that I've trundled into town, we have things like street pastors and city wardens, and there's a lot of agencies involved. I think the perception is, and possibly misplaced, and anything that would alleviate that, especially in the press coverage of situation.
Perfect. I will work with both police and our officers to see what we can do around that. Thank you. Are there any other questions? I'm not seeing any hands. Thank you for your verbal update, and we'll move on to the thematic report update on cybercrime. Are there any questions on this report? I'm not seeing any hands. I think you're getting away quite easily on that. Is there anything you want to add to the report?
I can easily go over a few points if that's in order with you.
Thank you.
Good morning, convener and members, for their time to consider the paper which you have in front of you. As members will know, it's a follow-up paper to the report committee previously considered in May 2021, which outlined the division's intention to establish a local divisional cyber-enabled crime team known as DSET, the first of its kind in Scotland. As explained, DSET has been established and has been running now for 18 months. It's resourced by a detective sergeant and 8 officers, two of whom are from operational policing on a rolling attachment. The unit is overseen by a detective inspector and comes under my line management. To support the delivery of the unit, we introduced a new strategy based on the 4P principles of prevent, prepare, protect and pursue. The paper gives some narrative around these. I can advise committee that within the first 18 months, a significant number of cyber-enabled crimes have been investigated by the specialist team. And as criminal proceedings remain live for the majority, I can't go into the specifics here today. What I can tell you is that in many of the occasions, these are often highly sophisticated crimes which would not have been detected without the investment of DSET. Although the monetary amounts, which run into hundreds of thousands of pounds each time, can mask the fact that at the centre of each crime there's a victim who may not always be vulnerable, and includes businesses and individuals, the young, the elderly and everything in between. Of significance, the perpetrator is not only local but national and on occasion international. In the fullness of time, I hope to be able to report some of the early successes of the unit, which I'm confident you'll find reassuring. We've undertaken time and investment in additional training for the detective officers, which is enabling us to influence and upskill our divisional colleagues, and particularly those on the front line. It's also allowing us to work closer with partners to identify those who may be at higher risk of this type of crime and share crime trends, particularly the emergence of non-contact crimes. The level of collaboration has been very good amongst our partners, but there remains more we need to do collectively. Members will note the work done through the revised Grampian Adult Protection Adults at Risk of Financial Harm subgroup, which includes statutory and third sector partners. Members will also note from the paper a review of the unit has recently been concluded, which highlighted strong evidence that the DSET have been considerably more effective in supporting, progressing and positively concluding inquiries than before. And the challenge for the team and all colleagues is to continue to work closely with partners to get further upstream and prevent individuals becoming the victim of this type of crime. I submit the paper for your consideration and happily answer any questions. Thank you.
For that further update, are there any further questions? Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, thank you, convener. So just something popped into my head. Thank you for the report. It makes reassuring reading to see that we're being so active in cyber-enabled crime. There's mention of fraud in the paper and also crime. Just for my clarification, and apologies if I missed it in the report, but is it just purely fraud that you're looking at, or are you looking at the likes of malicious communications, or is that handled by a separate team? Thank you.
Thanks. It's specifically cyber-enabled fraud, and there's various different types of that, which was on the original paper submitted in 2021, which is all the investment frauds, the romance frauds. It's all online cyber-enabled. Your traditional frauds are dealt with by other teams.
Yeah, any further questions? I'm not seeing any hands. Are we happy with the recommendations? Great, thank you. And you're free to head off if you so wish. We'll move on to 9.3, which is the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service thematic report. Mr. Ewing is online. Are there any questions? I'm not seeing any hands. Mr. Ewing, have you got anything to add to the report that's in front of us?
Convener, just a couple of things to kind of add and highlight the committee, if that's okay. Within the report, you'll see it as a self-explanatory report that hopefully we've captured everything. You can see though, for example, with regards to our engagement for home fire safety visits, that it is a steady increase from the COVID pandemic years. Obviously, that's because we are managing to access referrals and get into properties. One thing it doesn't capture in the report is just a reminder of the Make the Call initiative that we've got. So essentially, if you've got a family member or if you're in visiting a relative or a friend and you've got any concerns, that you can actually call the fire service, and all of those contact details are on our website. With regards to the bonfire and fireworks safety initiative, I'd just like to take the opportunity to again thank the support that the committee and partners gave with regards to Operation Fox and the start of that initiative when the Community Safety Minister visited Aberdeen at North Anniston Drive. And again, you'll see in the table there that there has been a reduction in bonfire activity during that period, and that is purely down to partnership working, and it can't just be laid at the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service for that reduction. I kind of skipped over a little bit with regards to the Gramps Walks and Talks initiative, so that you'd see in 4.1 of the report. I'd just like to highlight the pictogram that's in there. You can see that clearly there is a trend to the summer holiday period, and it's not going to notice that there has been an increase in the last reporting year. So the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service have funded an improvement on the education material that is being delivered at schools. And then really just the last one really to highlight is our future initiative. So work is underway, working on the Safer Aberdeen initiative, which will carry out CPR, fire safety events, and obviously working with all our partners that's listed in the report. Obviously, we won't manage to get the data from that until that pilot is rolled out further afield and we can collate that data. And just the last bit to highlight from the report is the road safety initiative is currently underway. And again, you can see that there has been a slight increase in Aberdeen City during the last reporting period. So apart from highlighting those reports, Convener, I'm more than happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Convener. Probably not so much a question as a comment. I was actually going to ask about the Gramps being a councillor for Kincardine and Cove, as is the convener, and as is Councillor Brooks, who's also in the chamber today. But just to say, it's reassuring to hear that trend is being addressed with extra funding for educational work. So thank you for highlighting that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. You've taken the words right out of my mouth. And I will note that Councillor Nicholl is at the back as well. Are there any other questions? You've gotten off lightly today, Mr. Ewing. Thank you for your attendance.
Thank you.
And we'll move on to the performance report at 10.1. Are there any questions for officers? I'm not seeing any hands. Are we happy with the report? Thank you. 11.1, we've got the community empowerment strategy. Do we have any questions? Not seeing any. Oh, Councillor Thompson.
Sorry, becoming a habit today, Convener. Yeah, just about the community empowerment strategy. I know that at the recent meeting of the Anti-Poverty and Inequalities Committee, there was a commitment to have a sort of panel of people with lived experience of poverty, and I just wanted to just clarify whether that comes under the umbrella of the community empowerment strategy, just to ensure that we're employing good practice whenever we're asking members of the public to make themselves available to help with consultations and engagement.
Thank you, Ms. Crombie.
Thank you for that question. Yes, it absolutely sits with in what we're trying to achieve with the community empowerment strategy. So we've got a programme of activity planned to engage communities on a thematic basis across our local outcome improvement plan. So poverty would be an area of interest there. So absolutely, when we're seeking that involvement from community members, we can identify people that might prefer to be on that user panel or some of the other opportunities we've got for them to engage in our activity. So we can definitely build that into the process.
Perfect, thank you. Are there any other questions? Thank you. Are we happy with the recommendations? Thank you. Moving on to 11.2, we've got the Building Standards Activity Report. Are there any questions? Councillor Graham.
This may not come as a surprise. I mean, I think myself and even the other local councillors have been on about it. The disused shops in Logie Place, not only are they dangerous, but they're just a carbuncle in the landscape now. You've got the new road going over from North Anderson Drive to Achmal Road. We've been on to the people about what can be done about it, and it's still there. And I think it's only a matter of time before somebody gets hurt when they're in it. Is there any possibility of putting in special effort to get this demolished at least?
Mr. Booth, would you be able to answer, or Mr. Tierney?
Sorry, Convener, I missed the very first part of what the councillor said in relation to the building.
Well, first of all, I think that not only are they dangerous, and I do think that they're dangerous. I think my fellow councillors and everyone in Middlefield and Northfield think that they're dangerous, but they are just a carbuncle in the landscape. We've recently redeveloped Middlefield. We've improved the houses there. We've gotten in the new road at North Anderson Drive, and it's just there. You walk and drive down North Anderson Drive. Here you go. It's a picture. One is, I am very concerned that it may lead to an injury among kids or whatever that's climbing on it. And I'm just wondering if more can be done. I appreciate the problems that you've got because we've all been on it years about it. But I'm just wondering if we could put in some special effort, given the work that's went on round about it and the danger that it is in, that something could be done to at least demolish it and leave the land to the landowner who doesn't seem to be doing anything about it.
I've got Mr. Booth poised to answer.
I think it was, Convener, through yourself, I think it was really just to help Mr. Tierney in the background. I know it's quite difficult when you're online to catch the start of questions, so I'm just confirming it's regarding the shops at Logie Place, which are in a bit of disrepair at the moment. They're not in council ownership, and the question's just around whether there's any enforcement notice the council could put on to improve the situation. Mr. Tierney.
Thank you. Yes, so I think specifically regarding these buildings, quite happy to take this away. We can review the situation again, see what the status is with regards to a notice, communications with the owners, and see if we can get this moving forward. Happy to take this away outside of the committee though, and report back.
And if that could maybe be that update circulated to local members, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Yes.
Are there any other questions? Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Convener. Just for clarification, I mean, recently in the press, there's been a lot of reporting on dampness issues in houses and how they're injurious to health and how they've been, mould has been given as a cause of death. Is that something that you would see as part of your remit rather than as it kind of moves up in the public perception and importance, or is it still sort of more purely the sort of structural issues that you would be focusing on?
Mr. Tierney.
So I think it's very relevant to highlight that, you know, given the recent circumstances where the young child passed away. Ultimately, the condition of the building always sits with the responsibility for that sits with the owner of the property. So in the first instance, you know, we would always encourage and advise the property owner and what they needed to do to resolve the situation. That wouldn't at that point in time, we would always carry out a risk assessment to determine if it was a defective or potentially dangerous, but ultimately the responsibility sits with the owner to make good the property.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? Are we happy with the recommendations? Perfect. Thank you. Moving on, we've got 11.3, the Resilience Annual Report. Are there any questions? I'm not seeing any hands. Are we happy with the recommendations? Perfect, thank you. 11.4, we've got the Preventing Homelessness Memorandum of Understanding. Do we have any questions? I'm not seeing any hands. Are we happy with the recommendations? Thank you. 11.5, the operation and enforcement of licensing and registration schemes in private rented housing. Do we have any questions? Councillor Graham.
Just a question. I mean, I found it most interesting. I knew most of it's been here for 20 years, but I thought it would be great if people on the licensing committee got a copy of this if they haven't seen it before.
McDonald.
Thank you. Trying to catch me out now. So let me consider that through the terms of reference. The reports are public, so I don't necessarily have any issues about sharing documents or committee papers across committees. What I don't want to do is flood them. So if you just allow me to go away and just look at terms of reference and make sure that, you know, that's helpful, then more than happy to consider that.
Councillor Stewart.
Thank you, convener. Just a question in relation to this. And I have been a registered landlord myself, but I just wondered, is the council now going out to visit landlords to see that the properties are actually up to an acceptable standard? Is that something that they do now?
Ms Jansen.
Thank you, convener. There are particular properties, especially under HMO licensing and short-term let licensing, that require an inspection. And if we receive any tenant complaints in, depending on the issue, one of our officers will go out to inspect the property.
Thank you, convener. But as a rule of thumb, you don't go out and visit everyone that registers to be a landlord. It would just be specific groups, or if there's a complaint.
That's correct.
Okay. Is that something that would maybe be looked at?
Mr McDonald.
Thank you, convener. Thank you, Councillor Stewart. I just want to, with Ms Jansen, when we look at landlord registration and things like that, there are criteria that have to be met. So there has to be an application that is thoroughly vetted and checked, and then that registration is taking place. Then if there's complaints or concerns, and issues can come from many areas, not just the community or a tenant, then that's when officers would be engaged to go investigate further and potential visits. But just to reassure committee, before a licence is issued, there are checks taken, robust checks taken before that licence is granted. I hope that helps a little.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? I'm not seeing any hands. Are we happy with the recommendations? Thank you. And the last paper is 11.6, the Housing Improvement Group update. Do we have any questions? I'm not seeing any hands. Are we happy with the recommendations? Perfect. Thank you so much for attending.